All right, guys, we've got another Sunday scan. Hopefully, you guys have been enjoying them. I've got a lot of great feedback, a lot of good comments. So, as always, I do appreciate that. It lets me know that you guys are interested. First and foremost, Traders for Cause. We're within 2 weeks now. So, this week, going out to Vegas, John and Pete Najarian are doing an event there. So, I'll be there and presenting a little something there, as well as the following week I'll be right back in Vegas and we'll be doing our 6th annual Traders for a Cause. So we've got quite a few people going this year again, a lot of new faces, which is always going to be great, and then a lot of old folks that have gone every single time. That always makes it more fun because it's kind of like an annual thing that everybody goes and sees each other. So excited for both of those. Both should be great, and everything that John Najarian and Pete Najarian have done for us is always awesome. So I'm assuming that this is their inaugural event. So I'm assuming that it's going to be a great thing too. And one other note, right after our event, I'll be joining Sang Lucci again, and he's going to do a little Lucci Meets at 2 p.m. on Sunday. So as I've been saying on the prior videos, we still do things on Sunday. It's not just a Saturday event. We do have speakers. We do have more trader talks and different things on that Sunday. And usually we finish up around 12 to 1 p.m., usually about 1 p.m. So just keep that in mind, especially if you try to book a flight out, relatively early or whatnot. I usually stay till Monday. Then I don't have to rush things and get a chance to kind of unwind a little bit. So anyway, moving on to the scan. We have a lot of great action on Friday. We had China headlines, or I guess Washington White House headlines saying that they potentially might delist some of these, or actually all these Chinese companies and whatnot. So that could be very, very far-fetched, but regardless, it just hammered a lot of the big names: JD, PDD, CTRP, Baba, Momo, all these Chinese names that we've always seen kind of steadily trend higher and higher and higher, and they're very difficult to trade many times. JD, I've always had a difficult time trading just because it always does one more push than you think, and it kind of seems to be the case with a lot of these Chinese stocks, where if you even try to fight the trend at all or try to be the contrary trader, meaning short when it's going up and whatnot, you're in for a little bit of a ride. So it's nice though when it's got tape like this, because it offers some pretty good action. And CTRP, which was Friday's nice winner for me, offered a fantastic opportunity, but it wasn't the normal Chinese type name where they're going further than you think or unwinding further than you think. It was actually a pretty nice natural movement, and what should have happened based on kind of what the price action suggested. So anyway, let's jump right into scan. JE has been a nice little trender. The daily chart has been suggesting that it wants to kind of rebound for quite some time. Keep in mind this is up from about $1, just a little bit above $1. Steady trend. We talk about these wicks a lot, where the dips get bought up, dips get bought up, the dips get bought up, and the more times that happens, as long as it's trending in a steady grind, at some point, if it retests that prior resistance, a lot of times there's a really nice breakout. And obviously we got that. We're almost into the gap here. This goes to about 239, and we close right around 220s or so. So we've got a little bit more room. Then we get into that gap towards about 305. So we have potential there for a nice little breakout type squeeze. But also, I don't want to take it off radar, because a lot of times these things just slowly come back in and offer some fantastic trades if you keep them on radar. It's very easy to take them off radar, look back and see it back towards $1 in a couple weeks, but I try to keep these things off radar. That way I don't miss out on the backside, and for right now, higher the better. So if it has a weak open and it starts to base and grind a little bit, that is a trade that I would still take long. We've had that on SSI, huge chart. big action. But each day, the same wicks that we talk about, right? Comes in, heads back up, red to green, rips. Comes in, right back up. Comes in, right back up. And so when you see those wicks, that's actually letting profit takers come in, and then new buyers come out, come back into the market. Profit takers out, and it also brings in shorts. When it comes in a little bit, shorts come in, they get a little excited, it's red, and then it slowly grinds back up. And if you think about it, if you had, let's just use a number, say 20,000 shares, it ramps up, it dips, you're probably going to go down to about 10,000 there. And then it starts to go, and then it has a big breakout day, comes back red, and then ends up coming back. They probably shook you out to maybe 5,000. So that's every single time you see these pull back and then come back up, they're really taking that big chunk you have, dwindling it down to lower and lower and lower and lower, and then you always get that nice blow off move at the end because nobody's got any size left. They've kind of worked everybody out and then worked shorts in. So that's typically why these types of wicks interest me, and we also saw this on a bunch of other nice breakouts lately. HOME, similar things where each day it just kind of gets soaked up and then it busted out for a new high. It also was doing it, it started at right around the 780s or so. So, these types of consolidation patterns, bullish consolidation patterns happen all the time, and it's just really up to you to kind of identify that rather than always trying to find the top. So INMD. INMD was a very nice opportunity on Friday. Thursday into the close, I had seen FSLY and a bunch of all these other IPOs starting to finally come in. The ones that had been going steadily up all day or all month finally started to get their bids pulled and really start to unwind. Profit taking came in, FSLY being the prime example. But we've seen it across a bunch lately. And so with that said, I was kind of looking left to anticipate the right? And so under this 25 level, I knew we'd probably start to get some panic. Because you can see, just by drawing a line across, you can kind of see that was the base, 2450s to 25 range. And then before that, it was really about 2580s, 26. So in between that range, if 26 started to get a little heavy every time it tried to break through, then I'm interested. So that was my goal coming into Friday. However, we had a lot of headlines, we had a lot of action, so I totally was not watching this thing. But fortunately, we've got a lot of good guys in the room. They were watching it, and as it broke this level right over here, that's when I started to get interested. So, and that's actually when I first saw it. So I knew from the day before, hey, just because this thing's down $1 does not mean I'm going to miss out on the opportunity. Because if yesterday I was interested, yesterday being the day before, so if Thursday I was interested in the fact that, hey, if this thing pulls back, it's going to go down maybe $2, $3, $4, maybe $5. So if that's the case, then $1 is not too late to get involved. And I used to always take things off of radar if they were red and if they were down 50 cents or $1 or $1.50. But when you go back to what was my plan for the trade and it was more than that, $3, $4, $5, then you're still early, as long as the price action suggests. So anyway, I was able to join pretty quickly there, and we'll do a recap as well, probably tonight or tomorrow. But I'll show those trades and whatnot. But I was able to join the trade, join and add, scale into the winner, and then I made it to about this washout over here. It did go down another $1, but you can't get every dollar out of it. But still got about 2.5 out of the $5 of range, being $1 late. So that was still pretty good. And I was really happy with that trade. So with that said, you can see that it still did stay relatively heavy off the rebound. Now, whether or not that was just the tape on Friday and everybody kind of, unsure, headline here, headline there, and everybody just kind of, taking profits wherever they could, wherever they were up, or if we finally did, finish this huge daily move, and we're going to start to kind of break down and go back under the 20s. So that is also a possibility, and this action is suggestive of that if tomorrow or Tuesday, it confirms, meaning it goes back up there and it kind of fails the 2250s, fades off. So the keys in my mind is around the 23 level and the 2250s. As long as those levels are staying heavy, I'm interested for the backside unwind. And we might still get that towards 20, 19, 18, and we'll go over EMPH in a bit, but similar situation where a lot of people will look at this action and say, oh, you know what, maybe I missed it because it's already pulled back quite a bit. But in my opinion, there might still be another $4 of downside here. So I try not to take these things off radar, especially if they haven't hit the full anticipated range, at least in my mind, of what's possible. So back to that FSLY. Another example, just like ENPH, just like INMD, not to underestimate what could happen here. So we're under this basically support. You can see on the September 26th. You can see on, or excuse me, that was August 26th. September 9th, and then over here, September 20th, 21st. You can see they were pretty much basing in the 25 range. So now we broke under that. So now the floodgates open, stops hit, and starts to unwind. So at this point, we may stay heavy for quite some time because we've had HCAT is another IPO, LVGO. We've had these just steady unwind trades since IPO because these things are super crazy overvalued when they come out. Work you saw, Chewy you saw. So all of these things had some huge moves. But the reality eventually comes. And so we may be getting that with FSLY. And with that said, you just don't want to underestimate how far it can unwind. So what we have to do is go back and look at, all right, where were the key points? Just like on INMD. So I always hope for maybe a 2250 push in the morning tomorrow. If we get a push to 2250, then that's going to give me a spot to kind of start to lean into. If it starts to base at 2250 and starts to grind off, then I would move on. I don't want to fight a name that's going to start to rebound. You should assume that it's going to rebound, but at this point, any $1.50 type rebounds, I think are probably going to get sold into, at least for the short term, until there's either some type of news or maybe next earnings or something like that. GSHI has been a pretty surprising one. Not much going on right now on the intraday chart. So, my focus is typically reactive trades, stuff where there's an edge, right? Stuff where I can get a 10, 20 cent type trade. So we had that. We had a nice unwind day, and it was a little bit of this action, a little bit of this action over here the prior days. But after that, there wasn't really much that happened. We had this blow off day. Actually, this was the day that I shorted it, and nice flush out, came back, stayed heavy, and then they flushed it out at the open, and it ended up coming all the way back. So now we're going sideways. So I just don't want to lose this one off radar, so I'll have price targets kind of set. So, remind me at 70 cents, 65 cents, 60 cents, remind me at 80 cents, 85, 90. That way you don't lose it off of radar, and you don't miss that 20, 30 cent pullback day, maybe even 40 cent pullback day. So the way that it's acting right now could be two things. One is they trapped a lot of shorts the last couple days, and so now they're just filtering them out, or we might actually have a really nice breakout. So you have to be prepared for that breakout to fail. So what I mean by that is, say they did trap shorts the last maybe Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So maybe they're just kind of trying to hold it up for the buy-ins, and that's their exit. So it'll look kind of like it did on Friday, where they're just filtering out size into, short cover. And then it'll just kind of fade off your radar and then unwind. That's what I don't want to miss. And that's what's very easy to miss when it starts to go into this mode. Otherwise, you get that nice breakout, you get the 120 squeeze, goes into a couple circuit halts, and then, you're given a good opportunity. That would be ideal, but we'll see what happens. So I'm prepared for both. But my suggestion is just set price alerts just so you don't miss it, because this is going to bore you. There is going to be a trade here, but there isn't a trade for me right now. So I want to make sure that I don't lose it off radar, but that's it. USAT, similar to what we had talked about. So this one got the delisting notice, and it was a really nice unwind on, I think that was Wednesday. So we knew this was going to be delisting, but a lot of times people take the price action that is bullish and say, oh, well, maybe it doesn't matter. But they forget that usually funds have to sell when it gets delisted to OTC. A lot of funds can't own OTC names. So that could be ETFs, it could be index funds, whatever it may be. So that's why you see this big, it was about a 5 million print, but typically they'll have a huge market on close order. And so then you start to get some pretty big unwind into the close, and that's exactly what we did. But that doesn't necessarily mean that just because it's delisting, it's going to go lower. And that's kind of what I had suggested. So, and I've learned this because I've made the mistakes in the past, thinking that has to go lower on OTC. So typically it stays heavy into the delist, and then people get aggressive thinking that it's going to go lower on the delist. And then as it gets on the OTC land, there's less liquidity. So they end up getting squeezed out on less and less and less volume. So what I had said in the room was I was thinking there'd be like a 13 GD, whatever, filing, and then potential, rally. And, we could end up going all the way back up to, where it came down from. Because at the end of the day, this is a real company, just not a good time for this company. But we've seen plenty of companies come back and relist. I'm sure that they're going to relist in the near term once they get their ducks in order. But don't understand how far that this thing can actually rally. But with that said, I need to see 550s actually firm up and hold trend. If they start to peak out a few times, then forget it. It's coming off radar. There's too much moving right now to really focus if this thing doesn't want to hold over this prior resistance. And the reason why I picked that level is you can just draw a line across, but also, you just go look right over here, draw a line across. So you can see that the 550s becomes a very, very big level, and at that point, it could get into squeeze mode. So we'll see what happens with that. But again, like I said, I was expecting maybe some type of filing. We got a Form 4, so they bought 1 million something shares. So we'll see what happens, but there's definitely a potential trade there. But again, it's an OTC, it's not a liquid name, but I do expect the volume to really taper off. RLGY, this one was a nice eye by Michelle, offshore hunter that runs the swing room. Really, really clean setup. This was an idea, I think, from Wednesday, starting to curl off of this little base. You can see it starts to get the wicks that we talk about, and then starts to retest this prior high, 650s, and now we're getting into some pretty big resistance. So if it does get through there, we might see, a little bit of a launch, 750s. If we get to fail, don't underestimate how, it can come right back down. So good eye, great trade by Michelle, and I always like seeing these types of charts because the minute that they slow down and they start to reverse, they also come back in nicely. LXRX is another one I just don't want to lose off of radar. Higher the better. Volume starting to lack a little bit. There was a lot of Form 4s here, but at some point, the day that there's profit taking that comes in, I think we'll probably go to 280s, something like that. So I'd like to remember it for that day, but obviously we're just not there yet. So keeping an eye on it for that. EXPR. It's not a crazy thin name like PIR and FRAN, but some of these retailers, I would compare maybe MIK. It's failed at 10 so far, but same kind of setup. So we're getting a lot of these nice setups on the daily. We get a nice reversal, starts to consolidate, and you can just draw a line right across this 10 level, maybe 1010s, whatever. And same thing with EXPR. You get a nice rally, comes back, consolidates around 320, 330s. and obviously your 350 level would be your trigger for higher. So, we had similar situation right here with Pier, and at 10, and then it had the huge breakout, and then we also had obviously Fran, a little bit different, not so much the same chart, but again, we're starting to set up a little bit of resistance at 15. Maybe it needs another week or two of consolidation before it might take on the next leg higher. So with that said, that kind of idea, process, thought has been working lately, so that's why I'm keeping that one on the radar. So the next two, JD and CTRP. We got to see what we come to the market with on Monday, obviously. Does Trump tweet something? Does the White House have some headlines about China, comments on Friday? Does, China respond? Does, there's so many moving parts in this kind of stuff. And with that said, keep in mind that you don't necessarily want to plan one big trade that might, you have to hold all day, because then all of a sudden you open yourself up to this headline risk. So typically when there's trades like this, even like UVXY or gold, I try to look for the move. Whether that's off open, whether it's reacting to a big move, whether it's a big chart breakdown. And then I usually, if I get the meat of that move, then I move on. Because otherwise, I open myself up to all this other headline risk, because it's not a normal, all right, the earnings are out, the PR is out, this is natural trading from here. Or, all right, MRNS, they put out the PR, now they can sell a bunch of paper, what other headline are they going to get? It doesn't mean that they're not going to have another headline, but the headline risk is a lot, smaller. Whereas if you're trading Chinese names, Momo, JD, CTRP, Baba, all these other ones, you're opening yourself up to a little bit of headline risk. So as long as you're sized in accordingly, as long as you understand that, fine. Because there's obviously some fantastic trades. This was a great trade on Friday. I missed this first flush. My buddy was all over it and kind of pitched the idea, the fact that they just raised at 28, and the long is buried now, literally buried from squeezing it back out. And so I got involved a little bit over here, added a little bit, and I was trading the flush and had a nice little ramp back up, and I got some at 29.98 and pretty much held all the way back down. And ended up being a fantastic trade. I tried to put on a little bit back into the close, and I got squeezed out probably about 10-15 cents a share on it or so. But regardless, look for the big moves. The reason I lost into the close was because I was trying to kind of anticipate what might happen versus reacting to the big candles. And that's where, in my eyes anyway, for me, my edge is. If I'm trying to anticipate the next move, then I'm either going to be right or wrong, and that's 50-50. So big action there. JD, same thing. Let these things set up. Let the candles really expand and give you the best edge anyway that you could get. You also got Momo. You've got Baba. I mean, you name it. There's a ton of Chinese names that you can just kind of go and focus. Same thing. DOYU is also a recent IPO that could get some pressure. And if we start to unwind, I'll probably actually add this one to scan. But if we start to unwind under 8, like I said on Friday, I mean, we can go 780s, 750s, maybe even lower. So this could be just like some of those other IPOs that have gone from 20 to 5 already, 4 I think on some of them. So that was CTRP and JD. FSLR, I just want to keep an eye on it. I wish my goal on Friday was to short any strength, any green, anticipating further fade. But unfortunately, I didn't get there. Just a quick note, using VWAP to your advantage. Using this as sort of a guide to maybe scale in or for your first entry. If you miss this trade, what makes it a good entry, right? What makes your next entry a good entry? And what I usually do is, number one, look left to anticipate right. So right away, you can see where it had resistance here, was also resistance there. But you never know. Maybe it bases and starts to go. So why not let it confirm VWAP fails, and then flush out. So right over here, you can be taking this trade versus this risk right here, this prior top. VWAP confirmed it, and then nice little trade. Obviously, hindsight, it's 2020, but again, I didn't take the trade, but that's the kind of stuff that I look for. So I'm just trying to share that so that you can kind of maybe see it in the future. AXSM, it's been a clean one. Nice trend join type play. This has been a goal on scan all week for the last couple days. Once it kind of cracked right here, my goal was just to join all weakness. Keep in mind, it's normal for these things to bounce back like this day. It open week and it rallied. What I wanted to see is morning shove, failed follow through. And to me, that could either be a gap up and it retests the prior resistance from the prior day or day before, or it has a weak open and it fails at the rally. And usually what you'll see is, fail, rebound, fail, and it's a little bit lower and lower and lower. And then you just set your risk accordingly. And so it ends up being a pretty clean trade. So again, I still think that we could have some washout. I mean, this has been straight up since 270s, since 7s, and there's been no real exchange of shares, any emotional change of shares, any exhaustion candles, right? Every time it's pulled back, even this day right here, it was down the most maybe. Next day, right back up. Same thing here. Next day, right back up. So this is the first time that people are actually being tried for their, their patience and their stops and all that kind of stuff. So, we very easily could test this 20 range, and if that does happen, maybe we get into the 18s. I know it's a long shot, but we are in that type of tape where this could happen. Just like EXAS, moves that you might not expect. We're going back and retesting levels of, last year. So keep that in mind, and I could easily see AXSM doing similar to EXAS, where you come down, rally, next leg down. And we also saw that on ENPH, which is coming up on scan. ENPH, and I also kind of hinted towards it earlier, but same kind of thing. Where these things have had major runs, up from 4, I think even lower, maybe 2. 2. And, there hasn't been any serious unwind, any spot where somebody's just unloaded. So longs have been rewarded and rewarded and rewarded again for holding, and at some point they're not going to be rewarded, and that's going to be where the stops hit and we get those types of unwinds. So again, like I have been saying, I like all pops until we either have news or base or next earnings or whatever. I think that the trend is suggesting that we could potentially go lower. So ideally get back towards this into the teens anyway. VNRX, fantastic trade the last couple days. The last 2 days, the goal has been to short any strength into the open. So we had a nice opportunity this day and nice unwind. And again, we didn't have much, but we had failed follow through momentum. So it tried to get back up through the 6s and it failed. And so I was there into the 6s a little bit, and a nice little unwind. So it went a little bit lower. I was pretty much out of the trade by right over here, and it kind of came back. My goal was to re-add, but I just never got there. Came back, but we're starting to base. So you need to recognize that we're starting to base around 530, 550 range. So if we start to base 550, 560, then I want to put the brakes on a little bit. However, if we start to stay heavy, 550s, 540s, 530s, I want to watch for the next unwind down to maybe like 450s, 4s. I've compared this to Rad Style. I've compared it to Blue Apron. I've compared it to NVAX, where this is not a low float stock. And the front side appears super, super thin. But once people start to take profits, once the backside comes in, it's going to be a lot thicker than you think. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Be aware of the snapback. Be aware that it can rally right back. But just obviously be cautious but don't underestimate how far this can go right back down to 450s, 5s. Pays has been a watch for me, just as a potential breakdown. Once this unwinds, we might be going to 8 very quickly. So nothing I'm crazy about for tomorrow, but like I said, I like to see charts. I like to be familiar. I want to be ready for them, be able to go from there. MU had earnings, big action. Nothing tonight that I'm ready for tomorrow yet. I want to see what it looks like. 43.80s, big level. 44.20s, big level. And all the way up to maybe 44.50s. So potential unwind, maybe back towards, if you go back to support, 42s. But huge candle, big range. I'm interested. I don't have a plan for it. I don't have a bias. I just want to see if there's going to be a reactive trade off the open. So again, it's just a watch for me, and then I'll go from there. Peloton, this has been nice. This was a nice little ripper into the close yesterday. We played the dips and whatnot and rallied up into the close. And so that one, I'm trying to be patient with this. So I bought dips. I put some in the IRA, as I said. I actually kind of have a good feeling about the potential here. Even though it's contrary to what everybody else is thinking, that doesn't mean I'm not going to take it off if I'm wrong. So I'm going to give this thing a couple bucks and see where we end up. But if we start to go back above pricing in a week or two, then I'll probably see how far it wants to go. But like I said a couple days ago, I welcome weakness. I want washouts. I want a better entry. And then I'm going to start to put some on. But if this starts to hold trend, I'm going to also be buying dips as a day trade. And I like the potential. I think that everybody hates on it and has said their piece about how much they hate about it. And if it starts to hold trend, then that means that everybody's on the wrong side. So again, I'm not going to force the trade. I want to see the trend hold, and so far it's been soaking pretty well. And so now we just need to see confirmation. So 25, I feel like, has soaked in a major way. I would say that 26 is the issue. Until we start to base over 26, then throw all bullish talk away. But if we start to base over 26 and start to take out new highs, then I think we have a potential. So far, you can see we're in a downtrend, but I think that 25 soaked quite a bit over here this day, and I think the same thing the last couple of days. So we'll see what happens, but again, everybody is on one side on this. So if the price suggests otherwise and it starts to base over the prior resistance, 26 levels and change, then I'm going to go with the trend. Last couple, ENPH I've already kind of hit upon. I've been talking about it for weeks. Higher the better. Just don't underestimate this. And we might be 18 to 20 range soon, and we'll see what happens with that. VSLR, this one was a hit piece. This is what happens when enough people know prior days. Obviously people knew. I had a lot of pressure, and then it's possible that they use their piece to exit their position. And when that happens, it's just like some of these other washed up hit pieces, research type firms that we've seen, and they start to get less and less trusted by the market based on the action that happens after. So let's see how it reacts. Right now, I would say that it had SSR on Friday. If a lot of people chase the tape down, then they probably got squeezed out. And we did see this same action on LOPE, LOPE. And what happens though is, here we are. Now we're back under 100. We're unwinding every single day. It hit 98. So the piece came out over here on this day, around I think 110, 108, something like that. And everybody goes nuts to FOMO. I don't want to miss it. I don't want to miss it. But you're just patient, if you like the thesis, if you like the idea, in the end, the report was not written for a day trade. And so now things are starting to come in nicely, and I wouldn't underestimate how far this can go. Citron has a very, very good track record. If you're trading for that intra-minute type, in and out, then the way algos are these days, the way that tweets are these days, it's probably not a good trade to take, right off the bat. But so the point is similarly with VSLR, watch it. Watch the price action. See if it stays heavier than it last, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And if so, then market probably agrees with what they put out. Your levels to watch is probably around the 710 range, because that was the prior base. So there's probably going to be some inventory there. But again, the candle suggests, a big cover came in, a bunch of shorts came in, they got squeezed out. So now let's squeeze them out more, and then look for that entry based off of their cover. And last but not least, the last couple, CAG had earnings, looking for a trend join over the next 2-3 days. I think they'll probably either be red, or green. But I think we'll probably have a couple candles the same in a row, and I'm looking for that trade. HOME. You guys know I've been watching this one for a while. It's no different than TWOU. And TWOU, the trade came, right? And we had that $2 down day, and it's been down since. So basically, everybody kind of bought the dip, then they got short, then they squeezed out. And all I'm waiting is for that emotion to fade off, join, and don't underestimate, because now we're going to go back into that pressure every single day, probably back down to 8s, 750s, 7s, whatever. Then last but not least, CPRX has been good to us. There's obviously a buyer here at 520 range, but that thing gives out. We're going 480s, 460s, maybe back down to the daily view up. So we'll see what happens. They obviously were not able to get that offering off. Like I said, they even had it at E-Trade, which, not a bash to E-Trade, but typically if they're going to pull off an offering, you don't see retail in there. And even if they did, it would have been super retail heavy. It would have been a disaster. So I definitely think that they weren't able to get the offering off. And that's why they canceled it, more so than the market, reaction. So that's that. If you guys have any questions, reach out. The drill, comment section. Here to help. I hope to see you guys in the room. It's been a really good couple weeks. And Vegas in 2 weeks. And that's about it, guys. Have a good rest of your Sunday, and go Pats.